In the quiet province of Quebec, Canada, during the 1960s, long before the internet allowed musicians to study virtuosos from around the world in seconds, a young boy named Alain Caron was already developing an unusual fascination with sound, rhythm, and musical expression. And unlike many future bass legends who began with formal conservatory training or came from elite musical families, Alain's story started in a far more humble and organic way, deeply connected to instinct, curiosity, and relentless listening. Born on May 5, 1955, in Saint-Éloi, Quebec, Alain grew up as the youngest of 11 children in a large family environment, where music naturally became part of daily life. And although resources were limited, imagination was not, because the young Alain quickly became obsessed with the emotional power hidden inside records, especially jazz records that seemed to contain a level of sophistication and freedom unlike anything he had heard before. At just 11 years old, Alain won an amateur music contest, an experience that gave him his first real validation as a musician and pushed him deeper into performance, eventually leading him into local bands where he played popular music, French standards, and American songs while learning the most important lesson any musician can learn early in life: how to listen. But everything changed when Alain discovered jazz. According to his own biography, an Oscar Peterson record completely transformed his musical perspective during his teenage years because suddenly music no longer sounded predictable. It sounded alive, unpredictable, emotional, intellectual, and dangerous all at the same time. Jazz became an obsession almost immediately, and that obsession would eventually help create one of the most technically astonishing bass careers in modern music history. Before we continue, subscribe now, like this video, comment, and share. Today, young bass players can open a video platform and instantly study thousands of lessons from world-class musicians. But Alain Caron grew up in an era where learning advanced jazz concepts required an almost obsessive level of dedication, because information was scarce and access to elite musicians was extremely limited. What makes Alain's rise even more extraordinary is the fact that he largely developed as a self-taught musician, studying records, slowing down passages with his ears, and internalizing harmony through constant experimentation rather than relying exclusively on traditional institutions. He eventually took correspondence lessons and later attended a summer session at Berklee College of Music, where he encountered an entirely different level of musicianship, meeting players who pushed his technical and harmonic understanding even further. But Alain never became a copy of the American fusion scene. Instead, he developed something more unusual, a hybrid style combining incredible fretless fluidity, aggressive rhythmic articulation, advanced jazz harmony, Latin influences, funk phrasing, and melodic sophistication that often sounded more like a saxophone player improvising than a traditional bassist. At a time when the electric bass was still largely viewed as a supporting instrument, Alain was already imagining it as a fully expressive lead voice, capable of carrying compositions, improvisations, and emotional narratives by itself. And soon, he would meet the musicians who could help bring that vision to life. In 1977, Alain Caron met guitarist Michel Cusson, and that meeting would permanently alter the trajectory of Canadian jazz fusion history. The chemistry between the musicians was immediate. Both players loved jazz tradition, but neither wanted to stay trapped inside traditional jazz structures. And together, they began building a new musical identity that fused jazz improvisation with modern technology, complex arrangements, funk grooves, rock energy, and almost orchestral levels of precision. The group eventually became known as UZEB, a band that many fusion fans now consider one of the greatest instrumental groups ever formed. despite never receiving the mainstream global recognition achieved by some American fusion acts. Drummer Paul Brochu soon joined the lineup, completing the core trio that would define the group's legendary reputation. And what separated UZEB from many fusion bands of the era was not simply technical ability, but terrifying synchronization. Their performances sounded almost machine-like in precision, while remaining explosively musical. During the 1980s, UZEB embraced advanced MIDI technology, layered synthesizers, aggressive rhythmic structures, and futuristic arrangements that felt decades ahead of their time. And at the center of it all was Alain Caron's bass playing. Fluid, hyper-articulate, melodic, fearless. Bass players around the world began noticing that something unusual was happening in Canada. A new kind of virtuoso had arrived. There are technically impressive musicians, and then there are musicians who fundamentally change how people think about an instrument. Alain Caron belonged to the second category. What made his playing so shocking during the 1980s was not merely speed or complexity, but the way he combined advanced harmony with groove and emotion simultaneously. Because many fusion players could play fast, but Alain made impossible phrases sound musical instead of mechanical. His use of the six-string fretless bass became especially iconic. While fretless bass had already been popularized by Jaco Pastorius, Alain expanded the vocabulary further by introducing wider harmonic textures, chordal movement, extended range, and astonishing control over articulation and intonation. Listeners frequently described his tone as vocal, almost singing, almost unreal. And perhaps the most frightening part for other musicians was how relaxed he appeared while performing extraordinarily difficult material. Online fusion communities still describe Alain as criminally underrated and six-string perfection, with many modern players admitting his recordings remain intimidating even decades later. By the late 1980s and early 1990s, Alain Caron had already become a cult hero among serious bass players worldwide. Even musicians who never fully explored jazz fusion knew his name. Because once you heard Alain Caron play, you never forgot it. Although UZEB never achieved mainstream pop celebrity status, within the world of instrumental fusion, the group became a phenomenon. The band toured internationally, performed across Europe and Asia, and released albums that demonstrated levels of composition and execution few groups could match during that era. Albums such as Fast Emotion, Between the Lines, Noisy Nights, and UZEB Club became essential listening for fusion musicians. The band earned multiple Felix Awards in Quebec and was eventually recognized by major jazz publications worldwide, including praise from Downbeat magazine, which listed UZEB among the best electric jazz bands of its time. What made UZEB extraordinary was their ability to balance complexity with excitement. Their music never felt academic. It felt explosive. Live performances became legendary because audiences witnessed three musicians operating with almost telepathic communication, shifting through impossible rhythmic changes while maintaining groove and emotional momentum. And Alain's bass lines often sounded like compositions inside the compositions themselves. Not accompaniment, not support, lead architecture. To fully understand Alain Caron's importance, you must understand the era he emerged from. The late 1970s and 1980s represented a dangerous turning point for fusion music. Bands like Weather Report, Return to Forever, and Mahavishnu Orchestra had already expanded the possibilities of jazz. But by the mid-1980s, many fusion groups had either softened commercially or disappeared entirely. Yet UZEB moved in the opposite direction. Their music became tighter, more futuristic, and more technically ambitious. Alain Caron especially seemed obsessed with pushing the bass guitar beyond conventional limits. And unlike many virtuosos who focused only on technical dominance, Alain cared deeply about arrangement, melody, atmosphere, and storytelling. That balance became his defining strength. Even today, many fusion fans argue that Alain Caron never received the same mainstream historical recognition as some American bass icons simply because much of his career developed outside the United States music industry machine. But among musicians, his reputation became legendary. In the early 1990s, Alain Caron expanded beyond UZEB and launched a solo career that allowed him even greater compositional freedom. His 1993 album, Le Band, immediately revealed a musician interested not merely in displaying technical mastery, but in building immersive musical worlds filled with groove, harmony, atmosphere, and melodic sophistication. Albums like Rhythm and Jazz, Play, Call Me Al, Conversations, and Sep 7 Entrion further established Alain as one of the most complete composer bassists in modern fusion. One of the most remarkable aspects of his solo work is how cinematic it feels. His compositions often move through multiple emotional environments inside a single track, combining funk grooves, jazz harmony, orchestral textures, Latin rhythms, and aggressive fusion improvisation without sounding fragmented. Many bass players initially discovered Alain because of his technical reputation, but eventually stayed because of his writing. And that distinction matters, because truly great musicians do not merely impress listeners, they transport them. Few musicians became as associated with fretless bass as Alain Caron. His tone became instantly recognizable, warm but articulate, aggressive yet lyrical, precise yet emotional. Over time, Alain developed close relationships with major bass equipment companies and became known for custom instruments specifically designed around his demanding musical requirements. But equipment alone never explained the sound. The real secret was touch. Alain possessed an almost frightening level of right-hand control, allowing him to articulate incredibly dense passages while maintaining warmth and clarity even during rapid melodic runs. His vibrato also became one of his signatures. Instead of using fretless bass purely for smooth slides, Alain treated the instrument like a singing voice, shaping phrases with emotional nuance, similar to a saxophonist or violinist. And because of that approach, his solos rarely sounded like exercises. They sounded alive. By the 1990s, Alain Caron was no longer simply respected. He was celebrated internationally. He appeared on the covers of major bass magazines, including Bass Player magazine and Bass magazine in France, and was repeatedly voted among the greatest electric bass players by readers and critics alike. In 1996, Bass Player magazine ranked him among the top bassists in the world. He also received numerous honors, including Felix Awards, SOCAN recognition, and the prestigious Oscar Peterson Lifetime Achievement Award connected to his work with UZEB, and later his solo career. Perhaps most impressively, the city of Rivière-du-Loup later inaugurated a music school named after him, École de Musique Alain Caron. That kind of recognition is rare, especially for an instrumental musician operating largely within jazz fusion. But Alain's influence had become impossible to ignore. Decades after his breakthrough, Alain Caron remains one of the most studied fusion bassists on earth. Modern players continue analyzing his phrasing, articulation, harmonic choices, rhythmic displacement, and compositional structures because his music still sounds advanced even by contemporary standards. Online communities constantly describe his material as difficult to transcribe and emotionally overwhelming in its sophistication. And perhaps that explains why Alain Caron occupies such a unique place in music history. He never chased mainstream celebrity, he chased musical evolution. That pursuit earned him enormous respect among serious musicians, educators, composers, and fusion audiences who understood just how difficult his music truly was. His legacy became built on musicianship itself, not trends, not marketing, not hype, pure mastery. For years, many fans believed UZEB would remain part of fusion history forever. But in 2016, the band reunited, creating enormous excitement inside the jazz fusion world. The reunion performances reminded audiences how advanced the group had always been. Even decades later, the music still sounded futuristic, and Alain's playing remained astonishingly powerful. Many reunion clips spread online among musicians who were shocked by how effortlessly the band recreated material once considered nearly impossible to perform live. For older fans, the reunion became emotional. For younger musicians, it became educational. And for Alain Caron, it confirmed something important. True musical innovation never expires. One of the biggest misconceptions about Alain Caron is that he is simply a technical bassist. That description completely misses the point, because behind the virtuosity exists an extremely sophisticated composer with deep emotional intelligence. Alain's writing frequently explores tension and release, melodic storytelling, rhythmic architecture, and harmonic color in ways that reward repeated listening. His music is dense, but never empty, complicated, but rarely cold. And that balance explains why his work continues resonating across generations of fusion listeners. He understood something many virtuosos forget. Technique alone does not create timeless music. Emotion does. One of the most fascinating questions surrounding Alain Caron's career is why someone so respected among musicians never crossed fully into mainstream global fame. The answer probably lies in the nature of fusion itself. Jazz fusion rewards attention, patience, musicianship. And Alain never simplified his art to chase commercial trends. Instead, he remained committed to musical integrity, advanced composition, and constant evolution. Ironically, that decision may have limited mainstream visibility while simultaneously guaranteeing long-term artistic respect, because trends disappear, but mastery survives. And today, among serious bass players, Alain Caron is still discussed with enormous admiration, often alongside the greatest fusion musicians ever recorded. Today, Alain Caron stands as one of the most important electric bass innovators in jazz fusion history. His influence extends across generations of musicians who continue studying his recordings, analyzing his phrasing, transcribing his solos, and attempting to understand how one player could combine such terrifying technical ability with such deep musicality. From a young self-taught musician in Quebec to a globally respected fusion icon, Alain Caron built a career based not on celebrity culture, but on artistic excellence. And perhaps that is why his legacy feels stronger with time. Because musicians eventually recognize authenticity, they recognize innovation, and they recognize greatness. Alain Caron may never have become a household name to mainstream audiences, but within the world of serious music, his reputation became something even more valuable. Permanent. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share. See you in the next video.